Welcome to another episode of Your Stories. This is my TMS journey. My name is Danny Fagan, and today we have an interview with a lovely lady called Chazmith Newton. And she is the host of the Our Power is Within podcast that I was on a few months ago. And it's a relatively new podcast to the self-healing space. And she interviews people that have come through different types of chronic pain, other types of symptoms in this kind of TMS sphere. So she is never on this side of the interview, so to speak. So I thought it'd be really cool to get her on and hear a little bit about her story and the modalities that she follows, the tools that she's used to overcome her symptoms and what she's kind of still experiencing now, and just get the lowdown from her and hear a bit more about her podcast as well. So I'm just going to let her in. Welcome, Chaz.
Hello, Danny.
How you doing?
Doing well, and yourself?
Yeah, great. Thanks, love. It's lovely to see you.
You too.
I know this is a bit weird for you being on this side of the interview desk, so to speak. So I just gave a little brief intro about you and your podcast, and that you interviewed me a few months ago, and it's still relatively kind of new to the space, but really getting some legs going now and momentum going. And yeah, I was just really interested to speak to you because I know you have an interesting story. I've heard parts of it already, but I know that as you have your own podcast and you're kind of, understanding so much about other people's healing stories, and this work where you're at now came from somewhere, right? It had to have been brought on from either healing from something yourself or still healing from something yourself, or that kind of journey. So I thought it was really important to get your insight into some other new kind of new to me modalities and healing tools as well that I've been really fascinated and kind of excited, waited to hear from you about, that I have actually no idea about. So I'll let you kind of take us back a little bit to where things started for you. And I also know, based on a conversation that we just had, that part of the healing work that you're doing is to not necessarily focus on specific symptoms that you've experienced, to kind of just not actually discuss those symptoms. So that's completely cool if you would like to not necessarily mention those things. Just take us back to where the kind of mind-body issues started to come about for you, and yeah, what age was it? What kind of stuff was going on in your life? Or, was there stuff that, not necessarily detail about things that triggered you, but like where it started, and just let's take it from there and see where the conversation goes.
Okay. Okay, let's see. So, yeah, it started young. It started, I don't know an exact age, but I was definitely in single digits.
Right.
My mom says that she remembers me having my first issues as early as like 5 or 6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I don't even know. It's so interesting because the more I learn about the mind body, the more I can. It's funny because I'm sure you know this. When you have a ton of symptoms throughout your life and you don't understand mind body, they seem so random and so not connected.
Yes.
And you're wondering why all these different things are happening to me. And then you start learning about mind body and you learn about the emotional connection and the traumas. And all of a sudden there's light bulbs like, oh my God, every single thing makes sense.
Yes.
And so obviously the better part of my life, I would say until my late 20s, early 30s, I was trying to treat everything from a purely physical standpoint.
Right.
Now, in hindsight, looking back, I can see where there was so many traumas that occurred, whether it's emotional, chemical, or physical traumas. I can see the traumas that occurred throughout my life. But yeah, rough childhood, typical TMS personality traits. Looking back, I can see that now. like basically the entire list that Dr. Sarno provides.
Yeah, same.
Definitely a rough childhood. And in hindsight, looking back now, I can understand why symptoms kind of slowly elevated and got worse, because as I learn the work of like Dr. Sarno and Nicole Sachs, I see how much as I was trying to do all these self-development books and like constantly, I had this constant urge to grow and be a better person in every capacity. But there's all this kind of interesting schools of thought that, you know, teach you to, you know, rise above, and, you know, it almost, I don't know how to explain this, but there was this long path where I thought that it was better for me to deny the childhood, you know, be like, oh, that wasn't that big of a deal. That wasn't, downplay it all.
Yep.
And what I realize now is that that was actually doing me more harm, because I was turning against myself and downplaying these very real, you know, to like the little girl at that time. I now have so much compassion for her and see what she went through, but it took until, gosh, even just this last year to unpack that, to realize that here I was thinking I was being so growth minded, but I was really actually shutting myself off from the truth of my emotions. Productive. So, you know, as early as like 5 or 6, and I don't mind like briefing or saying you know, think a little bit.
Okay.
It started with my like insane migraines that I just don't know that a child should have. The longest one I know lasted 17 days, where I was out of school for 2 weeks. Constant trips to the hospital, chiropractors for years, things like that, to no avail. Early on, around sometime in my single digits, it was also very anxious sleeping and night terrors. Again, you don't think that's mind body. You just
well, how would you? Yeah, you don't have that kind of knowledge, right?
Or part of you. And anxiety very young. In my teen years, I started getting these chronic reoccurring infections. And of course, I've gone to hundreds of doctors for that, and done every diet under the sun, every restrictive diet, like followed everything to a T. And as the years went on, that actually just got worse and worse and worse. 20s, I started having, you know, in college, I started having stomach and digestive issues.
And just along that whole timeline as well, like that compounded fear that happens along that time, everything gets worse and everything changes, but your kind of mindset and your emotional world as well must have just been so fearful of all this new stuff. Like, what next? You know, like what else can hit me?
Yes. And as so many of us know in the TMS community, is you go to doctors and you're told, oh, this is not like, this doesn't heal, this doesn't get better, you can only manage this. And that creates this fear too, like, whoa, wait, this is my life, I have to live like this. And then you become afraid of food, and you become afraid of this and that and all these things. And it compounds. Other things in my body, like I just noticed I've had a lot of injuries, you know, and I come from a coaching background and heavily involved in fitness. And I saw what people were capable of. I saw what people did on a daily basis for working out, and then how they recovered. And it was never my story. I would do like way less and be way more like taxed, you know? And I just kept thinking, this isn't right. This isn't normal. Like, this isn't like, what's wrong with me? Because this is not normal. And I have proof. I see it all around that like, this isn't what's supposed to be normal. Or getting an injury that like never heals, you know, like, and
so you would get injuries, sorry, just to run back a bit. So you get injuries in fitness, or you'd get like DOMS from fitness, but it would last a lot longer? Or would you get, you pull a muscle and then it would just be, you know, weeks and weeks, or what?
Yeah, like I would be doing half the work and get way more sore. That would just like prolong or like cause fatigue, you know?
Right.
And all at this point, I still didn't know really anything about mind body. I just thought I didn't know what was wrong with me, you know? It definitely sent me on a journey of like chasing health, chasing well-being, which probably is what led me into the industry I spent so much of my adult life. and all perfect, right? Because it's something I'm super passionate about. It's just like my mindset and my approach has changed. But yeah, it started with falling off a bike, getting a thumb injury that just wouldn't heal, It lingered for like a year, and I was like, this isn't normal. Still, I don't know much about mind body. And then the big catalyst for me was having a right hip injury that led to a back injury. And I'm sitting there doing all this research. Just now I feel like my whole life was taken from me because all these things I love, I can't do.
Yeah.
And in comes all the fears, and you read all this stuff, bulge disc, all these problems, it never gets, you read all these horror stories and you're like, oh, this can't be it. But I stumbled upon, what is it called? Phantom limb pain. I don't know how. I stumbled upon this phantom limb pain scientific, like really intense article. And I'm reading through all of it and learning about phantom limb pain, because there was something always intuitively that was like, I don't know how to explain it. I didn't know about mind body, but something intuitively didn't feel right. And so when I was reading about phantom limb pain, I had this instant, like, this is it. The brain, like, that's my situation. Like, I've rested, I've recovered, I've done everything right. Like, there's no reason for me to have back pain 6 months later. And I put this 2 and 2 together. Like, I'm stuck in a feedback loop. My brain is stuck in a feedback loop and I'm okay. And so I had my first experience of watching something just boom, transform, heal.
Really?
Because I made this decision. My back is okay. It's been long enough. I'm going to start doing things. And so rather than coddling myself when pain would kind of creep back in, because we know sometimes it tries to make its way back, I would go do deadlifts. I would do kettlebell swings and the pain would go away. It was me telling my brain, no, these are okay. Amazing. So that was my first like real experience with that.
And that was still just from reading reading the phantom limb pain thing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And helping my back and my right hip. And then, so then all of a sudden I'm getting this neck and shoulder pain. And now I had fallen snowboarding. So there's all those, falls. I can think of all these, all these things that added to it. But like this one fall in particular, my shoulder was like never feeling better, but it would move around and it got so bad. So again, here I am in CrossFit, restricting myself, limiting what I can do. And I finally had insurance. I went to the doctors, got an MRI. And got all these things. They're like, you need surgery, blah, blah, blah.
All the scary stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. But when they were talking about it, so I had like a torn labrum, which is, now I do research, I find out like 70% of, people have a tear in their labrum. Right. But my pain was like, it moved a lot. It was like in the front, in the back, in my shoulder blade. And when he was describing what was happening from a physical perspective, I was like, I'm not sold that's going to fix my shoulder blade pain,
That doesn't make sense. Yeah.
And so I set up a date to get this surgery. And then I don't even know how this happened, but somebody randomly said, oh, I used to have back pain. I read this book by Dr. Sarno. You should look him up.
Wicked.
So I did. And I read that book and I was like, oh, hello, this book was written about me to a T.
Same. It's like divine intervention that someone mentioned that book to you, right?
Yeah. And so I canceled surgery because I was like,
wow,
fuck, I don't need surgery. Like, I need to just go work out. And I did. I just started doing, treated my shoulder like my back. Because what that book did was took the fear away.
Yes.
So I started doing stuff. And the same thing, when I started feeling achiness, rather than like grabbing a ball and rolling it out and coddling it, I jumped on the pull-up bar and did pull-ups.
Great.
I grabbed the band and did, and boom, gone. No problem.
So you worked out directly on the area that was creating issues for you. I mean, that's dumping the fear straight away, isn't it? Like, come on, I'll show you. That's amazing.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, this is it. This is me. I felt it, And that went really good for a long time. I still had like the infections and the stomach and all that in the background. But the body stuff was like going really well for a really long time until symptom imperative and something else pops in,
Right.
and then it's like, fuck. And I knew, I was like, I know this is what I told myself. I had a couple other things happen. I'm like, okay, I know this is my mind body, but
yeah, by this point you knew about symptom imperative, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
And so my thought was, at the offshoot, it's not mind body. Everything in the body, like even if you break your femur, it will heal stronger in 6 to 8 weeks. So I told my brain, I know it's mind body, but at the very least, if I did tweak something physically, 6 to 8 weeks, I'm going to be better, because that's the longest it takes to heal. Right about 8 weeks, I felt better.
Wow.
Like, so it's like I'm blowing my own mind,
That's amazing.
And in the background, I'm still dealing with the infections in the stomach and all these other things going,
did you know
diet.
Did you know at that point that all of those different things were mind body as well, or were you thinking still that you weren't sure really what was what with those things because they're kind of more random?
Yes and no. I was like not 100%. Like, I read it in his books, but I didn't understand I didn't understand how to manage it, right? Because like the body stuff, it's easy. Oh, I'm not injured, go do pull-ups. But when it's like infections reoccurring or digestive issues, how do you manage that? How do you say there's nothing wrong with me? And I was also so deep in the health and fitness and nutrition at that time. So that's where in the background, I'm doing all these like strict diets where I didn't even take a single sip of things on the do not list. And as time went on, I just kept getting sicker and sicker and more, like it was just more reoccurring. And so there were times I was kind of, I was like so in and out, like I was trying to do eliminations and I would be like, oh, what did I eat today that caused this? And then I would pull back and say, like intuitively, I always knew, and I would pull back and say, it's not a specific food. That's not what it's about, like, so my soul knew that I didn't need to go down those rabbit holes, but I kind of did because I was so immersed. So I kind of went down a little and then I pulled back and I was like, this doesn't feel right.
I think that's a natural process though, isn't it? That just takes that time for you to retrain. You're literally retraining your brain to believe that these things are mind body as well. And it's the natural thing for any human to do, is to treat things the way that you've always been taught to treat them, especially if you've been in that industry in nutrition and your whole training and everything goes down that route. And like, why wouldn't you? I mean, it makes total sense.
Yeah, well, yeah, you learn all about paleo and primal and keto and all these things, and you learn, oh, dairy's so bad and gluten's so bad and this is so bad, and then the doctors, you go to a doctor's for your infections and they're like, you need to avoid this and this and this and and so it gets in your head, it gets deep.
Sure, for sure.
So I'll fast forward because there's just so many layers, but like
you don't have to go into it all.
Is the perfect storm, we had the whole perfect storm, because mind you, all that other stuff, it sucked. It inhibited me from living the life I wanted in a way, but it was manageable. But what became not manageable was stress was adding up from personal life choices that I made. I was in an unhealthy relationship. I was really having some issues at my job. And then top it off, my dog died. My dog was my best friend.
Right.
And that broke me open. I think that was the place where the first time in my life, I couldn't pretend to not feel. I couldn't, I couldn't avoid it. And I went into like a deep state of grief over it. And I just know that from that point forward, I felt really tired. I didn't really know what was wrong. And I thought, I'm just grieving, it'll get better, but it never did. It just got worse and worse. And that was the breaking point for me, because that's really what takes your life away. That's where you suddenly can't do like anything you want to do. So at that time, what's so funny is I didn't know that was mind body. I was catching on to these other things, but I didn't know that was. And I'll tell you this, even though it is really embarrassing and hard for me to say out loud, but that time period, I had always had like anxiety, and during hard periods of life, like maybe physical symptoms like shortness of breath and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually had like a full on panic attack around that time, out of nowhere. And I remember feeling like my biggest fear my whole life was coming to fruition, which I don't know, why at that moment, but I thought I was having a heart attack.
Right.
And I was absolutely certain that my heart was weak and I was literally on the verge of dying.
Yeah.
And I went to all the doctors, got all the tests for them to confirm my heart was okay. But
Wow.
it's still hard to believe
it. Scary stuff.
Yeah. And that went on for a little while. And then I made a decision to go travel. I thought Dr. Joe says that you need to change the environment. Like you can't heal in the same environment you got sick.
Dispenser you're talking about.
Yeah. And I was still thinking that meant physical environment, So I thought better thing to do than like give myself this gift, something I've always wanted my whole life. My dog had passed. I had the freedom. So I stepped away from all these things that were toxic and I took off for 6 months.
Amazing.
Yeah, but I was taking myself with me.
Of course. Yeah.
So I would say the journey didn't end up the way in my head I always thought it would, because I had all these issues like symptoms and things that really limited me in a lot of ways.
Sure.
But at the same time, it was such a beautiful, beautiful catalyst on what I call my self-love journey, because it taught me how to accept whatever it was,
Love that.
Instead of climbing volcanoes, I was lying in hammocks, and that became okay.
Love that.
During the end of the journey, I had come home early because of how sick I was, though, and it felt very exhausting and very stressful, and I couldn't deal with it anymore in that way. I knew I needed to be home and take care of myself and really get to the bottom of it. And it was around that time that a really good friend of mine recommended me to a brain retraining program.
I can't wait to hear about this. I've been desperately wanting to hear about this.
Yeah. And so what's really funny is I looked it up while I was still on the road, and it has all these symptoms and diagnoses and disorders and things. And I'm reading through it. I'm like, oh, yep. Oh, wait, this heals all these things.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, it just seems too good to be true. And I had it open in my phone Safari for like probably 6 months before I finally did it.
Wow.
But I came home, things continued to get worse, because that's kind of where it was after the perfect storm, just worse. And I finally said to myself, I need to do something. So I was going to go, my decision was I'm going to start going to functional medicine doctors. That seemed plausible.
Mm-hmm.
But they're expensive. They don't take insurance. And I thought, okay, I just have to do this, whatever it costs, whatever it means.
Yeah.
I reached a breaking point where I literally felt like I thought I was dying. I really did. Most of my family and friends don't even know that, but I literally was sitting in this functional medicine doctor's office, crying my eyes out to him, just pouring out everything.
Yeah.
And I literally felt like I was on the verge of dying. Like I wrote a will for my brother because I thought I was probably just dying. I couldn't possibly feel this terrible if I wasn't dying.
Right. Sure.
And it was so crazy because he looked at me, and this was somebody who was also a friend I knew from my past. And he said, have you ever heard of DNRS? And I was like, yes, I have. I was recommended to do this by a girlfriend like 6 months ago. And he goes, I think you could benefit from looking into this. And I thought, I respect this guy. I really respect him. He's really wise. Here he is also as a functional medicine doctor, and he's telling me to do this too, rather than do all the functional medicine stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I went home, I read it again, and I'm like, why have I been sitting on this? Signed up that day, and then that was 17 months ago yesterday.
Wow. So what is that? Like, walk me through what kind of exercises it entails, or what it is.
There's like pillars that we uphold, but basically the premise is from here on out, we're no longer giving energy or power to what we call them, in TMS symptoms, but in brain retraining, we just call it its. Like they don't even deserve a name. They
Okay.
don't do a diagnosis. They're it,
Interesting.
and there's triggers that offset them, right?
Right.
And so we start, like, it's a neural pathway rewiring program. So the idea is understanding that, like, they never really talk much about specifically it's that it's just emotional. We talk about like the limbic impairment happens, or as was same thing as TMS, tension myoneural syndrome, happens from trauma to the brain, whether it's physical, chemical, or emotional.
Right.
So we don't worry too much about where it came from, where the trauma came from. We worry about healing the brain by rewiring, restructuring the brain through neuroplasticity.
Right.
So we also learn in that program, as we already discussed, when you're ill or sick or in pain, you have all these new belief systems come up, the fears, the worries, the stress, like the sadness that things that you loved are getting taken away from you. And so what we do is we, in brain rewiring, we just are supposed to become very aware and conscious of our thought patterns throughout the day and redirect. So when limiting beliefs come up, when anything like negative, any negative thought patterns come up, we redirect them.
Love that.
And we talk out loud to our limbic system, and then we do guided visualizations. But these guided visualizations are our own. And we guide ourselves through memories that bring positive emotions. And we guide ourselves through future scenarios we want to manifest and create to bring positive emotions. And the idea is that in these visualizations, you're actually creating a state change so that you're physiologically feeling these emotions.
Right.
And the idea is that over time, you're rewiring these pathways to support, to calm your limbic system down, because as we know, when the limbic system and the nervous system are regulated, now we can get out of our own way and our body can heal.
Right.
Yeah.
There's so many similarities between, I mean, there's a lot of stuff about the neural pathways work that, Alan Gordon talks about, and leaning into the positive sensations and visualization and stuff like that. There's definitely, I mean, buckets of crossover there in terms of TMS recovery principles and DNRS. That's fascinating. And also weirdly part of my story as well that I've shared a couple of times. I can't remember whether we spoke about it on my interview on your podcast, but I do remember clearly having a really sort of pivotal moment in my own recovery when I started to plan. A holiday to Australia was one thing I started to plan. So it was visualizing what we were going to do, where we were going to go, how much fun we were going to have, who we were going to visit. I was going to visit family that I hadn't met ever, and things like that. And also going to do the yoga training that I went to do in India, and just like visualizing and planning something for my own future that was exciting and got my whole emotions and everything involved, and just was like, it completely took over my whole body and mind. How helpful that was and I had no idea that was like related to kind of, neural pathways and stuff like that. I just figured like, oh, this is exciting, I feel better because I'm excited about it. But since learning more afterwards, like that is like a technique, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's the thing, is because I knew about Dr. Sarno and read, The Great Pain Deception, and I knew all that other work. And I also had at one point read Dr. Schubiner's Unlearn Your Pain.
Yeah.
And I read it. I didn't do it at the time, but everything in perfect time, right? But yes, like the more I learned about all of it, I was like, this is all different language, same end goal, and it is same like objective through the journey, which is we're all and from every perspective, the goal is to just calm the nervous system, to calm the limbic system so the body can heal itself.
Right.
And and when you think about Dr. Sarno's earlier work, I think it was so cutting edge, and it was still so new that, his books have a very kind of a different way of explaining it.
Yeah.
But now all these other guys that have like followed in his footsteps, they have as we learn more about the brain, they very much equate it to the brain and the brain rewiring.
Yeah. And it seems to be, although sometimes it can be kind of misunderstood a little bit, that the different modalities in the TMS, kind of underneath the TMS umbrella, can seem to almost contradict themselves sometimes. Like the what was the one I was thinking about the other day? I was talking to someone about that. That, for example, Nicole's practice about teaching yourself to learn how to feel emotion through journaling was critical for me, because I didn't really know how to feel
Yeah.
things, like, and many people that don't necessarily use that technique or need that technique can literally train themselves to lean into positive sensation and practice positive experiences and stuff like that, and that is enough for them. But the underlying principle is kind of the same thing, is teaching yourself to feel safe and teaching yourself to not be hyper vigilantly freaking out, basically. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's teaching and through her work, you're calming the nervous system, because
Exactly.
the brain, the nervous system is no longer perceiving these repressed emotions as threatening, just
Yes.
the same as. And so it's in the same thing. Like, a lot of people are drawn to the brain retraining when they have hypersensitivities, which I've also experienced, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm still retraining and rewiring through. But it's the same thing, because it's just when you're impaired, when your limbic system is impaired, you are going to be hyper vigilant, and the brain
Sure.
is going to start perceiving all these things in the outside world or the inside world as threatening, when it's not.
Exactly.
Normal people.
Especially if you've been through a lifetime of different struggles like you have, it's not something that you can really just find out about this stuff and like go, oh, well, that's okay, then I'll be fine tomorrow. You can have
Yeah,
great strides in, like you said, you read the work of Dr. Sarno in the beginning and the book about the phantom pain and stuff, and have like instant kind of relief. But it takes a lot longer, I think, probably the longer that you've suffered, sometimes the longer it takes to unravel everything. And depending on what sort of emotional state you have and what sort of personality types you have and stuff like that, can take a lot longer to just unravel everything, I think.
yeah. Well, because for all the time that you're, say, in a certain state of illness, you're strengthening those pathways. So you
Exactly.
have to like, and so one thing I really love about the brain rewiring approach, and again, it's all similar. That's why I have a podcast, because I'm like, it's all the same. Like,
Yeah.
it all bridges. But
Yes.
what we do, something we do is called incremental training.
Right.
So it's exposure therapy. So if you have a sensitivity to something, or what your triggers are, you incrementally expose yourself to it and follow it immediately with like a visualization to create that change state. So now you're creating new neural pathways with what was once perceived as threatening. You're
Right.
creating a pathway that says, I feel joy and gratitude and ease, and this is safe and okay. So over time, you're retraining your brain to no longer perceive these things as
So
threats.
what sort of, can you give an example as to how that would kind of work? Like what sort of scenarios would you
Yeah. So if you
do
have a
that?
food sensitivity, you might, depending on everyone's walking their own path, so everyone's different, but you might start out with like just thinking about a food might set something off, like a fear. You might
Yeah.
notice, oh, if I just think about it, I feel like a tension, like tense
Yep.
up, I feel afraid. So you might start with just thinking about said trigger, and then go into this visualization where you bring up positive associations. You
Mm-hmm.
might eventually be able to hold said trigger. You might eventually be able to take a small bite of said trigger, and
Mm-hmm.
then you're able to just eat it and
Yeah.
be okay, you
Okay.
know? So it's like little bits of exposure, because the idea is you don't want to just go all in, because when you do, and while your brain, because it's not as easy to just say, hey brain, this is actually safe, we know that
Right.
doesn't work, and we have to show our brain it's safe. And
Mm.
so if you go all in, what you're going to do is you're going to get a reaction that is causing more stress to the
From the
brain,
fear. Right.
nervous
Right.
system.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you do like incremental. So that's been a really cool thing for me in this whole journey, is incorporating the incremental. I didn't do incremental training for like the first year,
Mm-hmm.
because again, I never went deep enough down the rabbit holes to really know exactly what the triggers were like.
Mm-hmm.
And now that, so my focus initially was just bringing calm,
Right.
just, and then now I've, in the last, however many months, 12 to 17, 5 months, I've been doing incremental training. And something I did where I veered away from the strict DNRS protocol is I did incorporate journaling.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Nicole's suggestion is to journal followed by a meditation. But what I actually do, because meditation is so fantastic, but it's such a, it's, I don't want to say it's a skill, because I don't want anyone to think, you know, so many people are like, oh, I'm not good at meditating. And
Yeah.
it's not a good, bad, right or wrong, but there's definitely, we can definitely refine the practice,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so what I do is I journal and I treat it as a form of incremental training. I look at it as I'm incrementally training my emotions just the same as I would this food or light or sound or temperature. Does that make
Love
sense?
that. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So I do allow whatever has to be said and talk to my inner child and like, be like, look, see, I'm creating this safe space. You can say anything you want. You get to feel whatever right now. And then I go into this visualization where I create this, like, you know, this memory, past or future, that I want to manifest.
Love that. So that would be your kind of your activity after you journal, would it? Or would you do that at the same time as you're kind of writing and then visualizing at the same time?
It's after. I give
Okay.
myself that 20 minutes or more to just journal and let it all out. And then I just afterwards lie down or sit down and do a visualization.
I think it must have the same kind of effect though, because the whole point of like meditation is self-soothing, right? And just creating that beautiful calm space. So whatever works for you. I know people that do just listen to music, or they go and have a bath, or go for a walk, go into nature.
Absolutely.
There's so many different things that you can try, and not everything works for everybody. So although meditation is something that I absolutely love, like at first it was a nightmare. I actually just listened in the car to Nicole's recent podcast about meditation and how it is just a struggle no matter how kind of good at it you are, you know, how long you do it, it is still, and that's the whole point of meditation, is that, you know, you're not supposed to be amazing at it like a monk sitting on the top of a mountain and like be able to completely switch your brain off. It's training the brain, again, similar to DNRS, I suppose. It's training the brain to notice when your thoughts are going wild and just bring it back.
Yeah,
It's that
totally. And I
awareness.
do meditate. It's one of my tools that I do use more now, more than for the first 12 months of rewiring, right? Like I was like, I'm going to stick with this protocol for like 12 months. And then intuitively, I mean, you know, anytime we do healing work, we're coming more into ourselves. We're remembering who we are. We're tapping into that intuition more strongly.
Yep.
And so I felt really called and pulled to like explore other tools that felt really good for me.
Yeah, perfect.
I do meditation quite a bit, but like, yeah, there's something so powerful for me, particularly about visualization, that really I can feel the change state in my body.
I
You know,
love
like you're
that.
visualizing and you can start laughing out loud, or you notice your smile spread across your face. And so, yeah, so I've definitely allowed myself to be more loose in the tools I use and really go with what feels
Yeah,
right.
you just tailor it to yourself, right? I mean, there's so many different modalities that you can pick and choose from, really, and find whatever suits you. What would you say then? Give me an example of like your visualization piece. Like what's a kind of an example of how that would go for you? What sort of stuff would you think about, and how would you get yourself into that mode? Like, do you just sort of tell yourself a story, or take yourself to a safe space, or what?
Yeah, we do it out loud. It's recommended to do it out loud. Most people, I know myself, I felt like I wanted to do it quietly at first, like in my head, but I committed to out loud. And now I find that actually speaking out loud helps me stay more focused. Where if you're in your like quiet, you can veer off, you know?
Yeah.
So that's what I like about out loud guided visualizations that I do, is I don't veer off. My mind doesn't wander. I am present, right? Like, and so it's just anything. And this is also, I was going to say, this is how things all tie in. This visualization is exactly what Dr. Joe guides you through in his guided meditations.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's all like creating the reality
Yes.
that you want to be. So there's so many, but I think of what is the life I imagine living? What are the things I'm doing? And I just take myself into those places. I'm trying to be a lot more creative with it. I find they work so much better when I make it fun and an opportunity to create versus like something I have to do, you know?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And incorporating music. And sometimes I even get up and I'll actually incorporate dance if that's like, okay, I'll share this one. It's
I love it.
my
Do it.
most recent one I did the past couple days was me traveling again. And I'm like in some foreign country and I'm at a drum circle and there's a big giant
Wicked.
fire and we're playing, like there's all these bongos and we're all just playing, you know,
I love
together,
that.
creating music and rhythm. And so I found a drum circle album and I play it and I kind of like beat with it, you know,
That.
and I have my eyes closed and I'm there and I just like let my body flow and move. And
I love
you know, I
that.
can see the smiles of everyone across from me. And yeah, it's like, I kind of treat it like I imagine what it would be like if I was really excited about a story that I was telling somebody.
Right. Yeah, I
And
love
then
that.
be in it,
It's
you know.
amazing. What a beautiful idea.
Visualization is a powerful tool. There's so many wonderful tools, but when you even think that majority of really high level elite athletes have all said, I visualized
Yes.
the shot over and over and over.
Yes.
You know, and it's literally like allowing you to live as if it already happened, to think greater than you feel, to live that life before it actually.
Yeah. I've heard that even in like those sort of techniques in hypnotherapy and stuff. A friend of mine actually that I've been to hypnotherapy with before, when she was training, she does train an athlete. He's a rower, I think, and she trains him, and he's winning all sorts of awards and stuff now, because she teaches him to visualize already winning and already doing it. And there's a guy, Jesse Isler, is it? I follow him on Instagram, and he does these crazy like Iron Man marathons for days and nights, one of those crazy like what are you doing races, and he says the same thing, like by the time he takes part in it, he's already run it, he's already done it. So it's like there's no fear in there, there's no like mad, you know, expectation or anything like that. It's just I've already done it, so I've already won, kind of thing. Whether he wins or not is by the by, but I think that's why I love I've never been very good at or really practiced silent meditation before, because I know that my monkey mind will probably it will be really hard for me. So I really enjoy guided meditation, and that side of it for me is, you know, probably very similar to the visualization, where I can literally be taken on a story and be able to live and experience that story and be completely like enveloped in that scene. And it's magic, like it's just amazing, but also feel like kind of so relaxed that I feel paralyzed, which is kind of odd, but I guess it's sort of like a dream state almost.
Yeah.
Love that
I mean,
example.
that's what it is. And for me, it's so funny because I can't do guided visualization meditations.
Okay,
I can't
that's
do them.
interesting.
I can't, like, I just don't connect, you know? So when I first started this program, I'm like, oh, I'm not good at visualizing, you know, those limiting beliefs. I'm not good at it. But when I realized it was me getting to create the exact, like what I wanted, to not like imagine this golden light or imagine you're walking down this stairway. Like, I don't want to do what they're imagining. I want to like, I'm like, now I'm empowered. I'm in charge of creating exactly what I want, you know?
I love it. I think that's amazing. I'd love to do more of that. I think that's such a cool idea. And whether or not, you know, people that watch this take part and researching DNRS or whatever, I think that's something that's a really cool tool that you can probably pick up quite easily without necessarily, you know, having a lot of training and following a specific program or whatever, that you can just use these type of things. Even in journaling, like you say, you can, you know, you can start to write a visualization out and then go off in your mind and think about it.
Something else you can do too is you can do visualizations of your past, and you can make believe, like it doesn't have to be a real, you can do a visualization of a memory that you love that brings all these good feels, but you can make it up. Like I do visualizations of my past things that never existed, but I think what would have a safe, happy, joyful, like what would a little girl who felt seen and heard, like
Yes.
what would be an experience she'd have? And then I
love
have
that.
those experiences, and you're rewriting your neural pathways for your past experiences as well, you know?
That's amazing. What a great idea. Yeah, to take your inner child on a journey that she would have wanted or needed
Yeah,
to be on.
yeah.
That's so cool. I love that.
Yeah. And so I feel like adding the journaling is cool because I'm allowing her to have a voice and to be open and honest with me so that we can show my brain these emotions aren't scary, or
Yeah.
we're not bad or wrong because we have these intense feelings. But then yeah, I also take her on journeys.
I love that. That's
So
amazing. Such a cool idea. I'm going to try that.
yeah.
So since you started DNRS, then what did you see drastic improvements? Like, how has that worked for you in terms of your sort of experience of your symptoms and stuff? You don't have to talk about them if you don't want to, but how has it changed your experience since doing it?
The first thing that I saw improve was my mental state. That was the
Right.
first big shift. And I think that's common. I think that's what I hear from most people.
Yeah.
Is it gave me a renewed sense of hope. For the first time in a long time, I had hope. I felt that I was on the right path. And
Yes.
it was such a great way to create, it gave me tools to follow. And initially, it was really wonderful to follow these tools. And so it gave me these tools that every day I could reference, that I could resource. I had tools. And that's something, I guess, with when I first read Dr. Sarno, maybe it was just me overlooking the journaling aspect of it all, but I didn't feel like I had tools. I was like, I know I can just go do the pull-ups, but I don't know if I have tools. And DNRS gave me tools. And I quickly noticed like a shift in my mindset also, because in the program, we don't ask each other, how are you? We don't ask, how do you feel? I sent out an email to everyone closest to me. And I briefly said, I'm doing this program and I need you to help support me. And you'll support me by not asking me these questions. These are conversations we don't have.
Okay.
And very early on, DNRS, I'm like, what, 39 when I'm doing this? And Chazmith learns about boundaries. What are boundaries? Oh, shit. I can actually say, hey, this conversation isn't good for me right now. Like, if a friend calls me and wants to have a bitch fest or vent, yeah, I'm sorry. That's not conversations I partake in right now.
I love it.
So that was like one of the best parts, was having hope, having noticed an immediate change in my mindset and knowing that I had tools. And then, yeah, since then, just like the TMS journey, it's like you feel way better, and it's called ebbing and flowing, limbic spikes. Like, and the more I study the brain, the more I understand that because it loves what's known and familiar, when you finally start chipping away and creating these solid changes, it tends to like have a freak out moment, and then comes the ebbs. And so I've kind of gotten to a point where now I almost know that when I have like a massive ebb, I'm like, yeah, I must have done some really good work. I was chipping away, like
something shifting always when that happens. It's like the extinction bursts and the same kind of thing, that different names for the same things, right?
Exactly.
You know that something's shifting if your symptoms move or if they get worse, or it's a good sign.
Yeah, and then having the support to be like, to remember to not go back in the fear,
Yes.
Trust. And the funny thing is the more that you have these ebbs and flows, the more you're like, I got you. I got you all figured out now. Now I know the truth, because if I really had this problem, I wouldn't have been better for the last 3 months. And then it came back, it would have just been there. So it definitely empowered me. And there was definitely a lot of improvement in the symptoms and its, and then there'd be ebbs where they came back, and then it would get better. And then there were times, I'm not gonna lie, there were times I thought, I'm in the emerge and thrive phase. This is good. And then all of a sudden you crash back down, and you're like, no.
And you think, I'm back to square one again.
So I just now have the mindset to get out of it.
Yeah, exactly. You've got all the toolkit right there.
Yeah. So,
and I think that's really important to say that, like, you know, even fully recovered people, even like I haven't had chronic pain like I used to have for like a year now, or close to a year. But I still get bursts of things when I have really stressful times. Like, I know I've got certain triggers that will make me, or knock me for six for a few hours or maybe a day, you know, and then it's like, pick up the tools. I know exactly what I need to do and get back on track. And it no longer rules your life,
yeah,
you know. But I think it's
yeah,
important to share stories like yours, because you've come so far with all of this different work that you've been doing, but you're still experiencing some, you know, some ebbs and like you say, some extinction bursts, or some different kind of, like, you know, your healing journeys like this, you're getting weird stuff coming back and haunting you for a little while, but it's not taking over your life anymore, and it's like just a matter of time until that becomes, you know, a thing of the past, or at least something that doesn't stick around for very long at all.
totally. And then all along the way, you just learning so much more. Like I'm learning so much more about me, who I
Yeah,
am, what makes me
yeah,
tick,
yeah,
what my inner authority is feeling called to, like honoring my truth, you
for
know?
real, for real. And that's huge.
Yeah.
Like, you go into this thinking, I want to get rid of my pain, or I want to get rid of my symptom, or I want to get rid of this. And then you think, once that's done, that's it. But I've said this a few times in different interviews, but I think that is like a secondary byproduct of this work. Almost like getting rid of my pain was now secondary to how my life has completely changed, like
Yeah.
how I have actually come to realize what sort of person I am, what I like, what I don't like, what I will tolerate, what I won't tolerate, what triggers me. Like, just that simple thing on its own, being so in tune with your body and almost feeling something bubble up before it even turns into a symptom, knowing yourself so thoroughly inside out that you can kind of notice why, like, just to be able to nitpick things like, why is a conversation with that person about nothing related whatsoever, about something really fun that they might have purchased or whatever, why is that making me so fucking angry?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not related. What is that? And just having the insight to be able to look into it and go, oh yeah, but there's all of this history with that person, or there's whatever it is, you know, whatever the story is.
Yeah.
To be that
Yeah.
in tune with yourself is just totally life changing, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's the mental stuff that kept me going. I mean, the more that I study and the more I understand the mind body, it's like this it's the symptoms, the physical stuff is so secondary. It's
Yes.
so like it's like not even a worry in the world. It's like I get my mind right. I get my, thinking right and aligned. I allow
Yep.
myself the space to feel, and that
Yeah.
stuff will fall away. It has no
Yeah. Yeah.
choice but to fall away because it won't be energetically aligned to me anymore. And that became my driving force very early on in DNRS. It was more like, oh, I get to get rid of these symptoms. That's going to happen. But I'm more excited
Yes.
that I get to choose the person I am now. I get to
I love
create the
that.
woman I want to be,
I love
Oh,
that.
even if that means I want to decide to be a morning person, I can work on that, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. 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 I love that. That's
We're not a
so
victim to our
beautiful.
personality or the way we've always been. Like, here's opportunities to really transform and grow.
Totally, totally. And I think it's weird as well. I was watching something, I can't remember what it was, what I was watching yesterday, that was like they were talking about oh no, I was watching the Red Table Talk with Jada Pinkett. They were interviewing Brené Brown. I was like binging on Brené Brown content, and I can't even remember what it was they were talking about now. It's gone out of my mind, and I've synapsed. Oh my god, this happens to me so often. I think I need to retrain my brain to just stop thinking about 10 things at once and actually think about what I'm thinking about. Sorry, it's gone. Well, that's good. I will
But
clip
I
that
love
out.
Renee Brown.
Yeah. Anyway, it was
You
something
know,
really good. Watch it. It was a really good interview. I can't remember what we were talking about now. What were we talking
it'll
about
come.
just before? Just before that.
We're just talking about getting to like upgrade like our own who we be.
Yeah, I can't remember. Anyway, watch that.
Yeah,
Oh, damn it. That happens to me so often. Just need to get used to this.
very fun.
Um, yeah. So where are you at today then? You're still doing your DNRS, but you're doing your own sort of self-practice, or are you part of a program still, or how's that working?
Yeah. So I still uphold their pillars besides the four rounds. And that's a lingo for DNRS, but a round is like considered basically around 15 minutes where we talk to our brain and then guide ourselves through past and future visualizations.
Right.
I am committed to, so their practice is that hour a day. So I commit to a minimum of an hour a day of self-care and self-healing practice, but I might not do 4 rounds. I might do a heart math, heart coherence meditation, or a Joe Dispenza meditation,
right,
or visualizations, and then I also journal. So I commit to at least an hour of practice, practices and tools towards healing. But I really try to honor what feels right for me each day.
Yeah.
And because, so the thing is, for me, that I've learned is I've spent my whole life being so rigid, so hard on myself, so rule oriented, so need everything to be perfect and rigid, and all the diets and all the things. I stuck so rigidly. And when I actually went to travel, that was the beginning where I was like, no more rigidity. Like,
yeah,
I need to learn that this is exhausting, and I just want a different way. But again, DNRS, I was committed to my healing. So I was like all in for it for like the year. But then my soul was like yearning for like not being rigid anymore after about a year's mark. So I uphold the pillars in the sense that I don't talk about it. I don't talk about negative stuff to anyone. Like, there's no venting in my life anymore. I don't vent. I don't bitch. I don't complain. Like, not everyone needs to know all my truth, and it's discretionary. And I redirect my POPs. POPs is a lingo for pathways of our past, which is like limiting beliefs or anything that is not the truth of who I want to be, like, so if I notice perfectionism tendencies or fears or anxieties or rumination, I redirect. I use my tools to redirect those throughout the day.
Right. And so what would you do just as an example then, in a moment like that, you notice yourself ruminating on something perfectionistic, what would you do? What would you do in the moment?
A couple things. What I used to do is like mini rounds. Like, there's like the first, like, however many steps of talking to myself, which is usually like telling your brain to stop, like reminding your brain that this is a learned behavior. What I actually tend to do now came from Dr. Schubiner's Unlearn Your Pain, which is like a very simple, just tapping on your karate chop point. And I acknowledge whatever is happening. Like, even though I'm noticing myself ruminating right now, I fully and completely love and accept myself. I know that rumination is a mind-body syndrome symptom, and I will not let it bother me. I'm on the path to recovery. I love his little tapping suggestion.
I've never heard of that. I haven't read that book. I haven't heard of that before.
It's fantastic. It's a great book. I've reread it recently when I started doing the journaling work, because it's really combining everything. It's like, it's the emotional release plus rewiring, and like creating your future. So that would be like my number one book I'd recommend to people.
I'm going to post it. I've got a page ready about the resource. So I'm going to post it because Charlotte talked about it as well.
Yeah, I would say it's intense, and it wants you to do a lot every day.
Right.
I would recommend following it at your own pace, not putting the pressure to have to do it in 4 weeks. It's deep, it's intense, but I love his little tricks. And so I do that. I do that too if I notice that I'm going to be experiencing a trigger. And if I notice like I have like a fear reaction or like tightening in my body, I'll say, oh, I am aware that I'm going to be exposed to said trigger, but this trigger is normal and it's okay. You know?
Love that.
And so, I found that the past few months to be super, super powerful distraction for me for distracting and framing.
Yeah. And also kind of soothing as well, right? If you're talking to yourself and you're tapping and it's sort of like a tactile thing, I can see how that would be quite calming as well.
Yourself that you love yourself.
Right.
And that you accept yourself and there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah. And you're safe. Like, Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And again, that awareness of just like noticing when thoughts like that arise, and noticing, you know, that's training in itself, isn't it? That awareness of like you're going into that kind of practiced mode of like overthinking or procrastinating or self bitching or whatever it is. That's training in itself to kind of notice yourself doing that, and that takes a little while to figure out.
Yeah, well, because it's like in meditation, how they say it's normal that your thoughts are going to veer off, but the power and the magic is in bringing yourself back.
Yeah,
It's the
exactly.
same in life. Like things are going to come up, the limbic brain's going to start, and that power is in us redirecting, because we're actually changing neural pathways every time we say, nope, we're not going there today, you know? And the other tool that I really love using is somatic. I literally just go into the now moment and I'll start saying, I see green leaves on the trees. I can feel my feet on the ground. I can feel the crisp, cool air, you know, like I just use senses, and I just observe and notice. And that brings me super present and totally out of the monkey mind.
Yeah, that's totally grounding. I do some of that. I mean, you've been to my yoga classes before. I do some practices like that in the beginning of the class before we do breath work, to just like zoom in, or rather zoom out, whichever way you want to look at it. Zoom out of all the shit that's in your head and zoom inwards, and just like looking at things. We'll do like gazing, horizon gazing, or gazing in front, gazing to the sides, focusing on stuff, noticing smells, like textures on your skin and stuff like that. And it's such a simple technique, isn't it? But it's really powerful.
Yes. Yeah.
I love that.
It's free. It's easy. Anyone can do it. And
Yeah, you
it's
could do it at any time as well, couldn't you? Like no matter where you are, even if you're sat in your office, you could do that.
Absolutely.
So I'm cautious about the time, because these conversations can go on, and I love them, and I could talk to you for hours. This is absolutely fascinating. I'm just wondering whether there's any more to kind of what you're practicing at the moment, any more sort of tools or anything that you'd like to share that you're using, or have we kind of covered most of the bases of the stuff that you're practicing at the moment, or that have helped you?
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. Like I said, incorporating meditation, heart-centered breathing, visualizations, journaling, all as needed, all as feels right. Um,
Is
just
there
up.
a sorry, I was just going to say, is there a specific name of the program that you followed that you'd like to mention that people could go and check out, or is it literally just Google DNRS and they'll find whatever?
That's it.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Dynamic Neural Retraining System.
Dynamic Neural Retraining System. Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, the somatic, just being in the present now, is a big thing. I use a little tapping thing, and yeah, I think, and laughing. I do want to address that, laughing.
Yes.
So this is maybe my favorite part of the DNRS community, is like we are all so committed to being absolutely as ridiculously silly as we need to be, because to create dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, to take charge and be responsible. And so we do laughter yoga, where we literally make ourselves laugh, like fake laugh until you start really cracking up. And giggle sessions. Like, so I literally just throughout the day, I make myself laugh. Like I just decide to start laughing for 60 seconds here, 60 seconds there. I think laughter is such a powerful tool. I think the best time to laugh is when you actually don't feel like it.
Yes.
And so laughing. And then the only other thing I would say is, again, I just incorporate, I had a wonderful interview with this lovely woman, Sarah Baldwin. She teaches polyvagal theory and somatic trauma healing and all that.
Right.
And just talking to her has really helped me to tap into the autonomic nervous system, and to just be aware of like what state I'm in, and learning how to take that one tolerable step. So she's just been like, her work really taught me to just be a little bit, to not be so quick to just get myself out of something that feels negative, but to just be aware, you know?
Right.
And,
just let it belong, kind of thing.
Yeah. And so I do a lot of like other silly things, like, you know, ohms and boos and the humming to stimulate the vagus nerve.
Love that.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that interview yet from your podcast. So I'll have to
It
give
hasn't
that a listen.
posted.
Ah, okay.
post next week.
Okay, love that. I'm a big polyvagal theory nerd, so I think I'll
Yeah.
be all over that. Love
I
that.
just love it all. I love learning all of it,
It's
and
fascinating, isn't it?
I just love the more tools I have, the more I can tap into what feels real in the moment and just,
Exactly.
do what
Plus,
you need.
your own recovery has led you to a place where you're actually sharing all of this healing kind of information with the world now. Like, same sort of thing that happened to me and many other people that get into this sort of work, that you find out this stuff and it's so groundbreaking and so fascinating. And like, everybody needs to know about this. Like, how can I not share this? Right. So, do you want to share a little bit about your podcast? Like, what kind of people you interview and what kind of stuff you talk about?
Sure. So the podcast, yeah, it's the inspiration and the goals to bridge the gap, because there's so many self-healing tools, and the deeper I study them, I've come to understand that they all have a different language, but they don't. They might have different words or terms or labels, but it's all kind of the same end goal.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's just I'm interviewing testimonials and experts and anything that you can think of self-healing. So whether it's people's experience healing through journaling and TMS, or, I've had somebody who literally his experience was using self-acceptance meditations and learning to accept what is and just be in the present moment. And other DNRSers or just any brain retrainers, because there's other rewiring programs out there like Vital Side and Gupta. And so just anyone who has stepped into their own power and decided to take their power back and realize that healing is an inside job.
Yes.
That's my go-to.
I love it. Hence the name. What do you want to share the name of the podcast?
Our power is within.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So I will put all of your links obviously in the, if you're watching this on YouTube, they'll be in the description below, but also I'll put, this is going to be embedded on my website with, the article that goes along with it and all the links and everything we've spoken about, so that everyone can find you obviously, and all of the stuff that you've been describing. Is there anything else that you'd like to add that is either inspiring or advice maybe to people out there listening that are kind of stuck and wondering what to do, and any kind of little extra nuggets of advice that you'd like to drop just before we close?
Yeah, so it's funny because giving advice is like that. No one needs anyone else's advice. Like the truth is that there's all these wonderful tools, and I do believe and understand that sometimes it could feel overwhelming and you might not know where to begin. But I believe that just begin somewhere, and then also be flexible and know that over time you're stepping more into your inner authority and your truth, and your intuition is going to be stronger and louder. And so if you feel a pull or a call towards something else, be your own experiment, be willing to step into whatever feels right each moment, free of the fear. Trust that we are all self-healers, that we do not need a healer outside of ourselves. And to just I see it in groups all the time. Oh, can I do this? Can I do that? What if I didn't do this perfectly this way? And I'm like, just stop. Stop asking all of us. Ask yourself, does it feel good? Does it feel right? Because there's not a one size fits all program out there. We're all way too unique. So if a program really resonates with you and it gives you the tools you need, but you need to tweak it or modify it or make it work in your life and for who you are, then do it. Let your healing journey just be an expression and an extension of the truth of who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I could put that on a shirt, please.
Fuck, man, can we all just take our power back?
Yes, I love that. It's so true. It's so true. But I think, like you say, you just got to start somewhere and see how you get on with it. But there is a level of resistance that goes along with this sort of work as well. Like you try something, I fucking hate that. I can't do that. I don't want to do that. I'll pick something else. Oh my God, I fucking hate that. I can't do that. I'll pick something else. But I think eventually, like you say, you find out, just over time and with effort and consistency, you find out the truth of the matter of what's going on for you. And it just takes time, doesn't it?
Yeah, and you got to stick with something long enough. I mean, like
Right.
I pretty much sticked very thoroughly to one thing, even though I knew other things. I was like, I'm going to go all in for like a
Right.
year.
Yeah.
And then it was when I started like letting myself. Now, with that said, in that year, I didn't follow every like guideline perfectly. You
Mm-hmm.
know, the guidelines are to do all of your rounds standing and walking. Like we do our visualization standing. 80% of the time I sat down.
Yeah.
And that was fine. Like it didn't
Yeah.
inhibit me from healing, you know, like sometimes I did them in my mind and not out loud.
Right.
Sometimes I did them while I was driving instead of being 100% focused. And
Yeah.
what I told my brain was, hey, look at this. I'm still showing up. I'm
Love it.
still doing the work,
I
however
love
I
that.
fit it in. And I think that's what's important is like stick with something because you're going to get the resistance, right?
Yeah. Right.
With something long enough, but as you start doing that work and tapping into that inner authority, like, and then like stick with something loosely. Like it's not like you don't have to like be such a. It doesn't have to be so rigid. You
It doesn't
know,
have
that
to
was
be
what I
life or
had.
death. Yeah.
You know, we don't have to ask like every little thing. Like, oh, I missed one round one day. Am I like not healing? No, you're
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because you still show up for yourself for 3. You
Yeah,
know.
I think it could be really scary though, can't it? Starting something out. And I think a lot of people on the groups as well tend to be people that are either in this sort of starting days of their starting months of their journey, or they're just stuck and nothing's really worked for them. So the questions and those forums are so amazing, and the response that people get is like so immediate. It can become almost addictive, can't it? To be like, am I doing this right? I had this thought, is this right? Or to be like just so not trusting in your own instinct and knowing that voice inside is actually guiding you to, to the right place for you. You just get so used to relying on other people's comment and other people's experience and what did you do and what did I do and all this kind of stuff. It's really tricky, but I think, like you said, I think it has to be your own path. It has to be your own journey just for you. Like you can't necessarily go, oh, okay, pick something off a shelf and that's going to work for me 100%. It might need to be tweaked or try something else or whatever.
Yeah. And just learning to trust ourselves, you know, and I get
Yeah.
it. Like most of us, we end up on our like final lifeline. We're like, we're desperate. We're like, this has to work. I gotta do it right because it has to work because there's nothing else, you know? And well, now I learned there's a lot of options, but yeah, just sticking with something, but then also just trusting the process.
Yeah. I love that. So many nuggets of wisdom. And you were so nervous about sharing this. I'm so happy you decided to do it. I'm so happy that you said yes to this interview because I've absolutely enjoyed every moment of it. I think it's been so valuable for everybody, I'm sure, watching it, just the different information that you're sharing, but also just so valuable to me to know like more about you and what you're sharing with other people, and not only just being on the other side of the table, like asking questions and hearing from other people. Like I think it's really important, and maybe even healing in your own journey to share your truth out loud to people as well. I think that's going to be really great for your own sort of progress.
Yeah, well, we hope so. I do quite like being the student though. I quite like asking the questions and like hearing everyone else's wisdom.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well,
the goal of all of this, right, is just that somebody hears your story or my story or somebody else's story on this, platform or a podcast, and you think that resonates with me.
Right.
I'm feeling whole. I feel like that makes sense to me, and then they pursue it.
Exactly. And if we can just help a couple of people with every single one of these things that we do, then exponentially we heal the world.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Chaz, for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it. And I will, again, put all of your links on the article and in the YouTube video to make sure people can find you and subscribe to your podcast and listen to all the great conversations you have over there as well. I wish you all the success and the best with your own healing and with your new project, still relatively new project. And it's been brilliant to talk to you. Yeah, you decided.
You encouraged me to do it, so that's a better word.
Yeah.
And it's good, you're right, because it can be really easy to just be like, oh, that's not, I'm not a morning person, or I'm not this person, or this is just the way I am. But we get just like with the physical healing, we get to change the mental stuff, and we get
Yeah,
to like find what is who we are. And so yeah, this was good.
exactly. You get to change your narrative.
Get me to step out of
You,
my comfort zone.
yeah, you've done it now. See, you've done it.
Yeah.
Well done. Thank you so much, Chaz. I'm going to close here now, so I will put you back in the waiting room.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Chaz.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye. I love that. So many wicked, interesting, fascinating parts of that story, and I just love learning about different modalities as well, and different healing tools that have worked for other people, even though they kind of sing a similar song to what I did and the stuff that I know about. It's always brilliant to hear from people that are so knowledgeable like that as well. And she's, you know, she's done so much work on herself, and hearing from other people as well on her own podcast just helps to get the word out there and just learn more along the way. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I will leave all the links to Chaz's content and her podcast, Our Power is Within. You can find her on all the regular podcast listening platforms. And my interview is there with her. I think I'm about number 4 or so on her interview list, episode list rather. So yeah, if you want to get involved in sharing your story, no matter where you're at in your healing journey, if you have insight and milestones you've met, or certain sort of light bulb moments that you've had on your journey, I'd love to hear from you. So go to mytmsjourney.com/stories, and there's a little module in there where you can submit your own story, and obviously listen to everybody else's interview as well if you want to catch up on anyone else's. And I might do one of my own at some point, although my own story is out there in a fairly few different places. But anyway, thank you for watching, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye.